Check-in is about 7 o'clock in the evening time.
Walking in this homeless shelter in Durham may look like most others.
This is the men's dorm side.
A common area to hang out, bunk beds to sleep in.
And we have a laundry space right here.
But what you don't see is the drastic change in who is welcomed in.
We've taken the focus off of rules and placed the focus on safety and moving people toward housing. And that's been a big component of that whole transition for us.
Executive Director Sheldon Mitchell says before 2017, many people were turned away from this building for having pets or drinking alcohol or not having an ID. But nearly 5 years ago, that changed when the shelter took down those barriers.
A lot of people felt like going low barrier meant that anything goes, and that's not what low barrier means. It's just a different focus in how we engage with the residents and what we concentrate on.
Mitchell says the mission and mindset of the staff flipped, letting go of rules and replacing those discussions with housing plans. And he believes it's working. Data shows that the number of people moving into permanent housing did go up once the shelter became low barrier. But the homeless population overall in Durham hasn't changed much, with slight dips and upticks since 2016. Around the same time, the Hilliard House in Richmond, Virginia also took the jump to become a low-barrier shelter.
The research seems to show that this works, and we're going to try it, and we're going to go all in, and we're going to prepare as best we can.
Beth Vann-Turnbull says the decision immediately shifted the way the staff interacted with the homeless families they help.
We keep people here successfully that would have been asked to leave before, and they do successfully move to permanent housing time and time and time and time again.
Vann-Turnbull says before the pandemic, they saw just how much the low barrier model changed outcomes. She says about 80% of people staying at the shelter found a permanent home in about 35 days, and 94% never returned to the streets. In addition, this data shows the homeless population as a whole dropped significantly after the low barrier shelter began. In fact, all 4 shelters in Richmond are now switching to this model.
I can't recommend it enough. It will transform how you think. It will transform your program, and it will be more successful if you do it well, and I think it's not that hard to do it well.
CityCare has 25 years experience in supporting people through recovery.
But in Oklahoma City, Adam Luck admits the low barrier shelter life is not easy.
You just know that it's going to be intense, that it's going to be difficult, it's going to be messy, it's going to be again, if it was easy, then everybody would be doing it.
The 12,000 square foot CityCare night facility opened in April with all 140 beds constantly full. It's the only option for many in the community, and Luck says he's been overwhelmed by the number of people who've needed it.
We thought we were really a part of that social safety net, and I think what we've realized is we're actually at ground zero, and people most often are just crash landing at the night shelter, and they're in crisis. They have so many needs.
He admits it's been a tough 6 months figuring out policies and shelter operations.
If staffing isn't right, then all your policies and procedures aren't going to be right, because the people are the engine to a well-functioning program.
But he believes it's worth it and that it's working.
That idea of being welcoming and being safe, I think the tension in between those two is where you stand if you're operating a low barrier shelter.
At the state level, Ryan Furman says low barrier is clearly the best option.
Low barrier is, I think, totally backed up at this point by some of the data that we see across the state in terms of who's able to access housing.
Do you have any hesitation about the low barrier shelter model?
I really don't have any hesitation at this point.
The North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness shared data and research showing that these types of shelters can have 95% success rates in getting people housed. Furman says not only are low barrier shelters recommended, they're often needed to get more federal funding.
Certainly in major metropolitan areas, if you're not low barrier, you know that's a disqualifier to even being able to apply for some of this funding. So, it is definitely, a trend that we've seen in communities across the state and across the country.
Back in Durham, Mitchell says the answer is easy. Do you believe that a low barrier shelter works? Is it working?
I think it works, and I feel like we saw results when we began to change that focus.
These changes passed by the Republican-led legislature will have major impacts across the state and here locally. Republican leaders say this was a transparent process and that these new maps are constitutional. This is North Carolina's new congressional map. Here's the state Senate and House maps. all bringing major changes to Western North Carolina.
They're all going to shift in ways that could be politically consequential. So again, real changes there.
Western Carolina political science professor Chris Cooper tells me while redistricting can be a confusing process, the changes have real consequences. Congressman Madison Cawthorn's 11th district will now be the newly created 14th congressional district. McDowell, Polk, and Rutherford counties have been moved out of the district and into the 13th, while a portion of Watauga County now falls into the 14th district.
Not surprisingly, if you look at the outcomes of these maps, they tend to favor the Republican Party. Exactly how much, I think folks are still sort of sussing out and trying to figure out.
With one lawsuit filed against the redistricting process, Cooper says more are likely coming, and he tells me that's the norm for redistricting in North Carolina.
Our maps have been challenged. Our maps have been criticized in North Carolina for the better part of a century, whether it's Democrats or Republicans control.
Buncombe County Democratic Party Chair Jeffrey Rose is also weighing in on the new maps, telling me these changes and lawsuits can make things complicated for potential candidates and voters.
We kind of knew the process was not going to be as fair and open and transparent as we would have liked it to be, so I'm not surprised to see the outcome that we've got right now.
North Carolina Speaker of the House Tim Moore said the redistricting process has provided the public an unprecedented view into the process. I did also reach out to Congressman Madison Cawthorn's office for comment on these changes, but I have not heard back.
We're hearing a lot about delays in shipping this year. Officials with the Postal Service in Greenville say they've invested a lot this year to make sure your holiday packages arrive on time. News 13's Caitlin Pinter shows us a new machine they say is making them much more efficient.
USPS officials say with this new machine, they take the package, they put a barcode on it, and then they send it up the conveyor belt where it automatically gets dropped into the box where the package is supposed to go.
The leader of the USPS Center in Greenville says they've got more staff and better technology this holiday season.
It's really increased the amount of volume that we can flow through our facility for our customers.
Much of Western North Carolina's mail is sorted at the Greenville Processing and Distribution Center. Executive Plant Manager Terry Mayers says over the last year, USPS has invested $40 billion into its facilities. They've changed over from manual to automated mail sorters.
It's given us increased capacity. We process an additional 45,000 pieces of parcels per day.
Before the new machine, this facility processed 270 packages an hour. Now they're doing 2,800 to 3,000 an hour.
So for people who are concerned about their packages making it on time, you say that they are going to make it on time.
I say be confident that we are prepared for the volume that we received this year.
Mayor says they are seeing impact from supply chain issues.
We expect as the supply chain loosens up that we will see surges at different points of that volume as it comes to our facility.
Mayor says you can help by getting your packages out early. If you want your package to make it in time by Christmas Day, USPS says you need to mail by December 15th for retail ground service, the 17th for first class, the 18th for priority, and the 23rd for priority mail express.
Officials here say they do need more help for the holiday season. They are hiring. For more information, you can head to our website, WLOS.com.